Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti-Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharane Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Paskacha Deshatarane. And to each other, Vanchakalpadrubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So in your Krishna books, let's turn to chapter 83. Draupadi meets the queens of Krishna. You said to start at the beginning, so okay, since we've already started, we're going to just start with chapter 83. Draupadi meets the queens of Krishna. There were many visitors who came to see Krishna, and among them were the Pandavas, headed by King Yudhisthira. After talking with the gopis and bestowing upon them the greatest benediction, Lord Krishna welcomed King Yudhisthira and other relatives who had come to see him. He first of all inquired from them whether their situation was auspicious. Actually, there is no question of ill fortune for anyone who sees the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. Yet, when Lord Krishna, as a matter of etiquette, inquired from King Yudhisthira about his welfare, the king became very happy by such a reception and addressed the Lord thus: "My dear Lord Krishna, great personalities and devotees in full Krishna consciousness always think of your lotus feet and remain fully satisfied by drinking the nectar of transcendental bliss. The nectar which they constantly drink sometimes comes out of their mouths and is sprinkled on others as the narration of your transcendental activities. This nectar coming from the mouth of a devotee is so powerful that if one is fortunate enough to have the opportunity to drink it, he is immediately freed from the continuous journey of birth and death. Our material existence is caused by our forgetfulness of your personality, but fortunately, the darkness of forgetfulness is immediately dissipated if one is privileged to hear about your glories. Therefore, my dear Lord, where is the possibility of ill fortune for one who is constantly engaged in hearing your glorious activities?" So remember, we're reading slowly. We're reading to Srila Prabhupada, so our face has to be up so the voice is carrying, and with feeling.
Since we are fully surrendered unto you and have no other shelter than your lotus feet, we are always confident of our good fortune. My dear Lord, you are the ocean of unlimited knowledge and transcendental bliss. The reaction of material concussion in the three phases of material life, wakefulness, sleep, and a deep sleep, cannot exist in Krishna consciousness. All such reactions are individual by the practice of Krishna consciousness. You are the unlimited destination of all liberated persons. Out of your independent will only, you have descended to this earth by the use of your own internal potency, Yogamaya, and relish the Vedic principle of life. You have appeared just like an ordinary human being, since you are the Supreme Person. There cannot be any ill luck for one who has fully surrendered unto you.
When Lord Krishna was busy meeting various kinds of visitors, and while they were engaged in offering prayers to the Lord, the female members of the Kuru dynasty and the Yadu dynasty took the opportunity to meet with one another and engage in talk of Lord Krishna's transcendental pastimes. The first enquiry was made by Draupadi to the wives of Lord Krishna. She addressed them, "My dear Rukmini, Bhadra, Jambavati, Satya, Satyabhama, Kalindi, Shaibya, Mitravinda, Lakshmana, Rohini, and all other wives of Lord Krishna, will you please let us know how Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, accepted you as his wives and married you in the pursuance of the marriage ceremonies of ordinary human beings?"
To this question, the chief of the Queen Rukmani Devi replied, "My dear Draupadi, it was particularly a settled fact that princes like Jarasan wanted me to marry King Shishupal, and as is usual, all the princes present during the marriage ceremony were prepared with their arms and weapons to fight with any rebel who dared to stop the marriage. But the Supreme Personality of Godhead kidnapped me the way the lion takes away a lamb from the flock. This was not, however, a very wondrous act for Lord Krishna, because anyone who claims to be a great hero or king within this world is subordinate to the lotus feet of the Lord. All the kings touch their hamlets to the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. My dear Draupadi, it is my internal desire that the life after life I be engaged in the service of Lord Krishna, who is the receiver of all the pleasure and beauty. This is my only desire and ambition in life."
After this, Satyabhama began to speak. She said, "My dear Draupadi, my father was very much afflicted by the death of his brother Prasen, and he falsely accused Lord Krishna of killing his brother and stealing the Shamantaka jewel, which had actually been taken by Jambavan. Lord Krishna, in order to establish his pure character, fought with Jambavan and rescued the Shamantaka jewel, which he later delivered to my father. My father was very much ashamed and sorry for accusing Lord Krishna of his brother's death. After getting back the Shamantaka jewel, he thought it wise to rectify his mistake. So although he had promised others my hand in marriage, he submitted the jewel and me at the lotus feet of Krishna, and thus I was accepted as his maidservant and wife."
After this, Jambavati replied to Draupadi's question. She said, "My dear Draupadi, when Lord Krishna attacked my father Jambavan, the king of the Rakshas, my father did not know that Lord Krishna was his former master, Lord Ramachandra, the husband of Sita. Not knowing the identity of Lord Krishna, my father fought with him continuously for 27 days. After this period, when he became fatigued, he could understand that since no one but Lord Ramachandra could defeat him, his opponent, Lord Krishna must be the same Lord Ramachandra. He thus came to his senses and immediately returned the Shamantaka jewel. Furthermore, to satisfy the Lord, he presented me to him to become his wife. In this way, I was married to the Lord, and thus my desire to be a servitor of Lord Krishna, life after life, was fulfilled."
After this, Kalindi said, "My dear Draupadi, I was engaged in great austerities and penances to get Lord Krishna as my husband. When he became aware of this fact, he very kindly came to me with his friend Arjuna and accepted me as his wife. Lord Krishna then took me away from the bank of the Yamuna, and since then I have been engaged in the house of Lord Krishna as a saver. and the Lord is treating me as his wife.
After this, Mitravinda said, "My dear Draupadi, there was a great assembly of princes at my Swayamvar ceremony, the personal selection of a husband. Lord Krishna was also present in that meeting, and he accepted me as his maidservant by defeating all the princes there. He immediately took me away to Dwarka, exactly as a lion takes his prey from a pack of dogs. When I was thus taken away by Lord Krishna, my brothers wanted to fight him, and later they were defeated. Thus my desire to become the maidservant of Krishna, life after life, was fulfilled."
After this, Satya addressed Draupadi in this way: "My dear Draupadi, my father arranged for an assembly for my Swayamvar, and to test the strength and heroism of the prospective bridegrooms, he stipulated that they each fight with his 7 ferocious bulls, which had long, sharp horns. Many heroic prospects tried to defeat the bulls, but unfortunately, they were all severely struck, and they returned to their homes as defeated invalids. When Lord Sri Krishna came and fought with the bulls, they were just like playthings for him. He captured the bulls and roped each one of them by the nostrils. Thus they came under his control, just as a goat's small kids come very easily under the control of children. My father was very much pleased and married me to Lord Krishna with great pomp, giving as my dowry many divisions of soldiers, horses, chariots, and elephants, along with hundreds of maidservants. Thus Lord Krishna brought me to his capital city, Dwarka. On the way back, he was assaulted by many princes, but Lord Krishna defeated all of them, and thus I have the privilege of serving his lotus feet as a maidservant."
After this, Bhadra began to speak. She said, "My dear Draupadi, Lord Krishna is the son of my maternal uncle. Fortunately, I become attracted to his lotus feet. When my father understood these feelings of mine, he personally arranged for my marriage, inviting Lord Krishna to marry me and giving him to Indori, one Akshoni, or division of armed forces, along with many maidservants and other royal paraphernalia. I do not know whether I shall be able to have the shelter of Lord Krishna life after life, but still I pray to the Lord Krishna, Lord, that whatever I may take my birth, I may not forget my relationship with his lotus feet."
Then Lakshmana said, "My dear queen, many times I heard the great sage Narada glorifying the pastimes of Lord Krishna. I became attracted to the lotus feet of Krishna when I heard Narada say that the goddess of fortune Lakshmi was attracted to his lotus feet. Since then, I have always been thinking of him, and thus my attraction for him has increased. My dear queen, my father was very affectionate toward me. When he understood that I was attracted to Krishna, he devised a plan like that devised by your father during the Swayambara. The prospective bridegrooms had to pierce the eyes of a fish with their arrows. The difference between the competition in your Swayambara and mine was that in yours, the fish was hanging openly on the ceiling in clear view, but in mine, the fish was covered and could be seen only by its reflection in a pot of water. That was the special feature of my Swayambara."
The news of this device spread all over the world, and when princess heard of it, they arrived at my father's capital city from all directions, fully equipped with armor and guided by their military instructors. Each of them desired to win me as his wife, and one after another they raised the bow and arrow left there for piercing the fish. Many could not even join the bowstring to the two ends of how, and without attempting to pierce the fish, they simply left the bow as it was and went away. Some with great difficulty drew the sitting string from one end to another, but being unable to tie the other end, they were suddenly knocked down by a spring-like bow. My dear queen, you will be surprised to know that my Swayamvar meeting, there were many famous kings and heroes present. Heroes like Jarasandha, Ambas, Sishupang, Bhimsen, Duryodhan, and Karna were, of course, able to string the bow, but they could not pierce the fish because it was covered and they could not trace out from the reflection. The celebrated hero of the Pandava, Arjuna, was able to see the reflection of fish on the water. But although with a great care he traced out the location of fish and shot the arrow, he did not pierce the fish in the right spot. But his arrow at least touched the fish, and so he proved himself better than all other princes.
All the princes who tried to pierce the target were disappointed, being baffled in their attempts. And some candidates even left the place without making an attempt. But when at last Lord Krishna took up the bow, he was able to tie the bowstring very easily, just as a child plays with a toy. He placed the arrow, and looking only once at the reflection of the fish in the water, he shot the arrow, and the pierced fish immediately fell down. The victory of Lord Krishna was accomplished at noon, during the moment called Abhijit, which is astronomically calculated as auspicious. At that time, the vibration of Jai, Jai was heard all over the world, and from the sky came sounds of drums beaten by the denizens of heaven. Great demigods were overwhelmed with joy and showered flowers on the earth.
At that time, I entered the area of competition, and the ankle belts of my legs sounded very melodiously as I walked. I was nicely dressed with new silken garments, flower decorated my hairs, and because of Lord Krishna's victory, I was in ecstatic joy and smiling very pleasingly. I carried in my hands a golden necklace bedecked with the jewel, which glittered in intervals. My curly hairs encircled my face, which shone with the bright luster due to the reflection of my various earrings. My eyes blinking, I first observed all the princes present, and when I reached my lord, I very slowly placed the golden necklace on his neck. As I have already informed you from the very beginning, my mind was attracted by Lord Krishna, and thus I consider the garlanding of the Lord my great victory. As soon as placed my garland on the neck of the Lord, there sound immediately and the combined vibration of mridangas, pratanga, and anka drums, conch shells, kettle drums, and other instruments causing a tremendous sound. And while the music played, expert male and female dance began to dance, and singers began to sing sweetly.
My dear Draupadi, when I accepted Lord Krishna as my worshipable husband and he accepted me as his maid servant, there was a tumultuous roaring among the disappointed princes. All of them were very agitated because of their lusty desires, but without caring for them, my husband, in his form as four-handed Narayana, immediately took me on his chariot, which was drawn by 4 excellent horses. Expecting opposition from the princes, he armored himself and took up his bow, named Sharanga, and then our celebrated driver, Daruka, drove the beautiful chariot without a moment's delay toward the city of Dwarka. Thus, in the presence of all the princes, I was carried away very quickly, exactly as a deer is carried away from the flock by a lion. Some of the princes, however, wanted to check our progress, and thus, equipped with proper weapons, they opposed us, just as dogs try to oppose the progressive march of a lion. At that time, due to the arrows released by the Sharanga bow of Lord Krishna, some of the princes lost their hands, some of them lost their legs, some lost their heads and their lives, and others fled from the battlefield.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead then entered the most celebrated city of the universe, Dwaraka. And as he entered the city, he appeared like the shining sun. The whole city of Dwaraka was profusely decorated on that occasion. There were so many flags and festoons and gates all over the Dwaraka that the sunshine could not even enter the city. I have already told you that my father was very affectionate to me. So, when he saw that my desire had been fulfilled by my getting Lord Krishna as my husband, in great happiness he began to distribute to friends and relatives various kinds of gifts such as valuable garments, ornaments, bedsteads, and sitting carpets. Lord Krishna is always self-sufficient, yet my father, out of his own accord, offered my husband a dowry consisting of riches, soldiers, elephants, chariots, horses, and many rare and valuable weapons. He presented all this to the Lord with great enthusiasm. My dear Queen, at that time I could guess that in my previous life I must have performed some wonderfully pious activity, and as a result I can in this life be one of the maid servants in the house of the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
When all the principal queens of Lord Krishna had finished their statements, Rohini, as the representative of the other 16,000 queens, began to narrate the incident of their becoming wives of Krishna. My dear queen, when Bhaumasur was conquering all the world, he collected wherever possible all the beautiful daughters of the kings and kept us arrested within his palace. When news of our imprisonment reached Lord Krishna, he fought with Bhaumasur and released us. Lord Krishna killed Bhaumasur and all his soldiers, and although he had no need to accept even one wife, he nevertheless, by our request, married all 16,000 of us. My dear queen, our only qualification was that we were always thinking of lotus feet of Lord Krishna, which is the way to release oneself from the bondage of repeated birth and death. My dear Queen Draupadi, please take it from us that we are not after any opulence, such as a kingdom, an empire of a position of heavenly enjoyment. We do not want to enjoy such material opulence, nor do we desire to achieve the yogic perfections. Not the exalted post of Lord Brahma, nor do we want to any of the different kinds of liberation, sarupya, salukya, sarsti, samipya, or sayuya. We are not all attracted by any of these opulences. Our only ambition is to bear on our heads life after life the dust particles attached to the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. The goddess of fortune also desired to keep that dust on her breast. Along with fragrant saffron, we simply desire this dust which accumulates underneath the lotus feet of Krishna as he travels on the land of Vrindavan as a cowherd boy. The gopis especially, and also the cowherd men and the averaging travels men, always desire to become the grass and straw on the streets of Vrindavan, to be trampled on by the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. My dear Queen, we wish to remain as such life after life without any other's desire. Thus ends the Bhagavad-Vedanta purport, the 8th chapter of Krishna. Draupadi meets the queens of Krishna.
Chapter 84. Sacrificial ceremonies performed by Vasudeva. Among the women present at Kurukshetra during the solar eclipse was Kunti, Gandhari, Draupadi, Subhadra, and the queens of many other kings, as well as the gopis from Vrindavan. When the different queens of Lord Krishna were submitting their statements as to how they had been married and accepted by Lord Krishna as his wives, all the female members of the Kuru dynasty were struck with wonder. They were filled with admiration at how all the queens of Krishna were attached to him with love and affection. When they heard about the queen's intensity of love and affection for Krishna, they could not check their eyes from filling with tears.
While the women were engaged in conversations among themselves, and the men were similarly engaged in conversation, there arrived from all directions almost all the important sages and ascetics who had come for the purpose of seeing Lord Krishna and Balaram. Chief among the sages were Krishna, Dvaipayan, Vyas, the great sage Narad, Chaivana, Devala, Asita, Vishwamitra, Satananda, Bharadwaja, Gautama, Lord Parshuram, along with his disciples, Vashishta, Galava, Brigu, Pulastya, Kasyapa, Atri, Markandya, Brahaspati, Dvita, Trita, Ekata, the 4 Kumar sons of Brahma, Shankha, Sanatana, and Sanat Kumar, Angira, Agastya, Yagnavalkya, and Vamadeva.
As soon as the sages and ascetics arrived, all the kings, including Maharaj Yudhishthir and the other Pandavas and Lord Krishna and Balram, immediately got up from the seats and offered respects by bowing down to the universally respected sages. After this, the sages were properly welcomed by the being offered seats and water for washing their feet. Palatable fruits, garlands of flowers, incense, and sandalwood pulp were presented, and all the kings, led by Krishna and Balram, worshipped the sages according to the Vedic rules and regulations. When all the sages were comfortably seated, Lord Krishna, who descended for the protection of religion, began to address them on behalf of all the kings. When Krishna began to speak, all became silent, being eager to hear and understand his welcoming words to the sages.
Lord Krishna spoke thus: "All glories to the assembled sages and ascetics. Today we all feel that our lives have become successful. Today we have achieved the desired goal of life, because we now see face to face all the exalted, liberated sages and ascetics, whom even the great demigods in the heavens desire to see. Persons who are neophytes in devotional service and who simply offer their respectful obeisances to the deity in the temple, but cannot realize that the Lord is situated in everyone's heart, and who simply worships different demigods for fulfillment of their own lusty desires, are unable to understand the importance of these sages. They cannot take advantage of receiving these sages by seeing them with their eyes, by touching their lotus feet, by inquiring about their welfare, or by diligently worshiping them."
Neophyte devotees or religionists cannot understand the importance of great Mahatmas. They go to the temple as a matter of formality and pay their respects, full obeisances unto the deity. But when one is promoted to the next platform of transcendental consciousness, one can understand the importance of Mahatmas and devotees. And in that stage, one tries to please them. Therefore, Lord Krishna said that the neophyte cannot understand the importance of great sages, devotees or ascetics.
Lord Krishna continued, "One cannot purify himself merely by traveling to holy places of pilgrimage and taking a bath there, or by seeing the demigods' forms in the temples. But if one happens to meet a great devotee, a Mahatma, who is a representative of the personality of Godhead, one is immediately purified. To become purified, one is enjoined to worship the fire, the sun, the moon, the earth, the water, the air, the sky, and the mind. By worshiping all the elements and their predominating deities, one can gradually become free from the influence of envy. But all the sins of an envious person can be nullified immediately simply by serving a great soul."
My dear reverend sages and respectable king, you can take it from me that a person who accepts this material body made of three elements, mucus, bile and air, as his own self, who consider his family and relatives his own, who accept material things as worshipable, or who visit holy places of pilgrimage just to take bath there, but never associate with the great personalities, sages and Mahatmas. Such a person, even though in the form of a human being, is nothing but an animal, like an ass.
When the Supreme Authority, Lord Krishna, was thus speaking with great gravity, all the sages and ascetics remained in dead silence. They were amazed upon hearing him speak the absolute philosophy of life in such a concise way. Unless one is very much advanced in knowledge, one thinks his body to be his self, his family members to be his own, and the land of his birth to be worshipable. From this concept of life, the modern ideology of nationalism has sprung up. Lord Krishna condemned such ideas, and he also condemned persons who take the trouble to go to holy places of pilgrimage just to take a bath and come back without taking the opportunity to associate with the great devotees and Mahatmas living there. Such persons are compared to most foolish animal, the ass. All those who heard considered the speech of Lord Krishna for some time, and they concluded that Lord Krishna was actually the Supreme Personality of Godhead, playing the role of an ordinary human being who is forced to take a certain type of body as a result of the reactions of his past deeds. He was assuming this pastime as an ordinary human simply to teach the people in general how they should live for perfection of the human mission.
Having concluded that Krishna was the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the sages addressed him thus: My dear Lord, we, the leaders of human society, are supposed to possess the proper philosophy of life, yet we are bewildered by the spell of your external energy. We are surprised to see your behavior, which is just like that of an ordinary human being, and which conceals your real identity as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And we therefore consider your pastimes to be all wonderful.
Our dear Lord, by your own energy, you create, maintain, and annihilate the whole cosmic manifestation of different names and forms. In the same way that the earth creates many forms of stone, trees, and other varieties of names and forms, and yet remains the same, although you create varieties of manifestations through your energy, you are unaffected by all those actions. Our dear Lord, we are simply stunned to see your wonderful acts. Although you are transcendental to this entire material creation and are the Supreme Lord and the super soul of all living entities, you appear on this earth by your eternal potency to protect your devotees and destroy the miscreants. By such an appearance, you reestablish the principles of eternal religion, which human society forgets by long association with the material energy. Our dear Lord, you are the creator of the social orders and spiritual status of human society according to the quality and work. And when these orders are misguided by unscrupulous persons, you appear and set them right.
Dear Lord, the Vedic knowledge is the representation of your pure heart. Austerities, study of the Vedas, and the meditative trances leads to different realizations of yourself in your manifested and non-manifested aspects. The entire phenomenal world is a manifestation of your impersonal energy, but you yourself as the original personality of Godhead and not manifested there. You are the Supreme Soul, the Supreme Brahman, person who are situated in Brahmanical culture, therefore can understand the truth about your transcendental form. Thus, you always hold the Brahmanas in respect, and you are considered to be the topmost of all followers of Brahmanical culture. You are therefore known as Brahmana Devai. Our dear Lord, you are the last word in good fortune and the last resort of all saintly persons. Therefore, we all consider that we have achieved the perfection of our life, education, austerity, and acquisition or transcendental knowledge by meeting you. Factually, you are the ultimate goal of all transcendental achievements.
Our dear Lord, there is no end to your unlimited knowledge. Your form is transcendental, eternally existing in full bliss and knowledge. You are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Supreme Brahman, the Supreme Soul. Being covered by the spell of your internal potency, Yogamaya, you are now temporarily concealing your unlimited potencies, but still we can understand your exalted position, and therefore all of us offer you our respectful obeisances. Dear Lord, you are enjoying your pastimes in the role of a human being, concealing your real character of transcendental opulence. Therefore, none of the kings present here, even the members of the Yadu dynasty who constantly mingle with you, eat with you, and sit with you, can understand that you are the original cause of all causes, the soul of everyone, the original cause of all creation.
When a person dreams at night, hallucinatory figures created by the dream are accepted as real, and the imaginary dream body is accepted as one's real body. For the time being, one forgets that besides the body created in hallucination, there is another real body in his awakened state. Similarly, in the awakened state also, the bewildered, conditioned soul considers sense enjoyment to be real happiness.
By the process of enjoying the sense of material body, the spirit soul is covered and his consciousness becomes materially contaminated. It is due to material consciousness that one cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. All great mystic yogis endeavor to revive their Krishna consciousness by mature practice of yoga system, just to understand your lotus feet. They meditate upon your transcendental form to counteract their accumulated sinful reactions. It is said that the water of the Ganges can vanquish volumes of persons' sinful reactions, but the Ganges water is glorious only due to your lotus feet. The Ganges water flows as perspiration from the lotus feet of your Lordship. And we are all so fortunate that today we have been able to see your lotus feet directly. Dear Lord, we are all surrendered soul, devotee of your Lordship. Therefore, please be kind and bestow your causeless mercy upon us. We know well that the persons who have become liberated by constant engagement in your devotional service are no longer contaminated by the material modes of nature. Thus, they have become eligible to be promoted to the kingdom of God in the spiritual world.
After first offering prayers to Lord Krishna, the assembled sages wanted to take permission from King Dhritarashtra and King Yudhisthira, and then depart for their respective ashrams. At that time, however, Vasudeva, the father of Lord Krishna, and the most celebrated of all pious men, approached the sages and with great humility offered his respects by falling down at their feet. Vasudeva said, "My dear great sages, you are more respected than the demigods. I therefore offer my respectful obeisances unto you. I wish for you to accept my one request if you so desire. I shall consider it a blessing if you kindly explain the supreme fruit of activity by which one can counteract the reactions of all other activities."
The great sages Narada was the leader of all the sages present. Therefore he began to speak. "My dear sages," he said, "it is not very difficult to understand that because of his great goodness and simplicity, Vasudeva, who has become the father of the personality of Godhead, by accepting Krishna as his son, is inclined to ask us about his welfare. It is said that familiarity breeds concept. As such, Vasudeva, having Krishna as his son, does not regard Krishna with envy and with veneration. Sometimes it is seen that persons living on the bank of the Ganges do not consider the Ganges very important, and they go far away to take their bath at the places of pilgrimage. There is no need for Vasudeva to ask us for instruction when Lord Krishna is personally present, because his knowledge is never second in any circumstance. His knowledge is not affected by the process of creation, maintenance, and analysis, nor is it ever influenced by any agency beyond himself, nor is it agitated by the interaction of the material qualities of or change in the course of time. His transcendental form is full of knowledge which never becomes agitated by ignorance, pride, attachment, envy, or sense enjoyment. His knowledge is never subjected to the law of karma regarding pious or impious activities, nor is it influenced by the three modes of material nature. No one is greater than or equal to him, because he is the supreme authority, the personality of Godhead.
The ordinary conditioned human being may think that the conditioned soul, who is covered by his materialistic senses, mind, and intelligence, is equal to Krishna. But Lord Krishna is just like the sun, which, although it sometimes may appear to be so, is never covered by the cloud, snow, or fog, or by other planets during an eclipse. When the eyes of less intelligent men are covered by such influences, they think the sun to be invisible. Similarly, persons who are influenced by senses, addicted to material enjoyment, cannot have a clear vision of the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
The sages present then began to address Vasudeva in the presence of Lord Krishna, Balarama, and many other kings, and as requested by him, they gave their instructions to counteract the reactions of fruitive activities and the desire impelling one to fruitive activities. One must, with faith and devotion, execute the prescribed sacrifices meant for worshipping Lord Vishnu, Lord Vishnu is the beneficiary of the results of all sacrificial performances. Great personalities and sages who are able to see everything clearly through the eyes of the revealed scriptures and possesses vision of the three phases of time element, namely past, present and future, have anonymously recommended that to purify the dust of material contamination accumulated in the heart and to clear the path of liberation and thereby achieve transcendental bliss. One must please Lord Vishnu. For everyone living as a householder in one of the higher social orders, Brahmana, Kshatriya, and Vaishya. This worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu, who is known as Puruषottama, the original person, is recommended as the only auspicious path.
All conditioned souls within this material world have deep-rooted desires to lord it over the resources of material nature. Everyone wants to accumulate riches, everyone wants to enjoy life to the greatest extent. Everyone wants to a wife, home and children, and everyone wants to become happy in this world and be elevated to the heavenly planets in the next life. But these desires are the causes of one's material bondage. Therefore, to get liberation from this bondage, one has to sacrifice his honestly earned riches for the satisfaction of Lord Vishnu.
The only process to counteract all sort of material desires is to engage oneself in the devotional service of Lord Vishnu. In this way, a self-controlled person, even while remaining in householder life, should give up the three kinds of material desires, namely the desire for the acquisition of material opulences, for the enjoyment of wife and children, and for elevation to higher planets. Eventually, he should give up householder life and accept the renounced order, engaging himself completely in the devotional service of the Lord. Everyone, born in higher status as a Brahmana, Kshatriya or Vaishya, is certainly indebted to the demigods, to the sages, to the forefathers, and to the living entities. And in order to liquidate all these debts, one has to perform sacrifices, study the Vedic literature, and generate children in religious householder life. If somehow one accepts the renounced order of life without liquidating these three debts, he certainly falls down from his position. Today you have already liquidated your debts to your forefathers and the sages. Now, by performing sacrifices, you can free yourself from indebtedness to the demigods and thus take complete shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. My dear Vasudeva, certainly you have already performed many pious activities in your previous lives. Otherwise, how could you be the father of Krishna and Balarama, the Supreme Personality of Godhead?
Saintly Vasudeva, after hearing all the sages, offered his respectful obeisances unto their lotus feet. In this way, he pleased the sages, and then he requested them to perform the yajnas. When the sages were selected as priests of the sacrifices, they in turn induced Vasudeva to collect and required paraphernalia for the executing the yajnas in the place of pilgrimage. When Vasudeva was thus persuaded to start to perform the yajnas, all the members of the Yadu dynasty took their baths, dressed themselves very nicely, decorated themselves beautifully, and garlanded themselves with lotus flowers. Vasudeva's wives dressed with nice garments and ornaments and golden necklaces, approached the arena of sacrifice, carrying in their hands and the required articles to offer in the sacrifice.
When everything was complete, there was heard the vibration of mridangas, conch shells, kettle drums, and other musical instruments. Professional dancers, both male and female, began to dance. The sutas and magadas, who were professional singers, began to offer prayers by singing. And the Gandharvas and their wives, whose voices were very sweet, began to sing many auspicious songs. Vasudev anointed his eyes with black cosmetic, smeared butter over his body, and then, along with his 18 wives, headed by Devaki, sat before the priest to be purified by the Abhishek ceremony. While the ceremony was being observed strictly according to the principles of the scriptures, Vasudeva resembled the moon encircled by stars. Because he was being initiated for the sacrifice, he was dressed in a deer skin, but all his wives were dressed with the very nice saris, bangles, necklaces, ankle bells, earrings, and many other ornaments. Vasudeva looked very beautiful, surrounded by his wives, exactly like the king of heaven when he performed such sacrifices.
At that time, when Lord Krishna and Lord Balaram, along with their wives, children, and relatives, sat down in that great sacrificial arena, it appeared that the Supreme Personality of Godhead was present along with all the living entities and multi-energies that are part of Him. We have heard from the Shastras that Lord Krishna has multi-energies and parts and parcels. But now, in that sacrificial arena, all could actually experience how the Supreme Personality of Godhead eternally exists with His different energies. At that time, Lord Krishna appeared as Lord Narayan, and Lord Balaram appeared as Sankarshan, the reservoir of all living entities.
Vasudeva satisfied Lord Vishnu by performing different kinds of sacrifices, such as Jyotishthoma and Darsha Purnamasa. Some of these yagnas are called Prakrita, and some of them are known as Saurya Sastra or Vaikara. Therefore, other sacrifices known as Agnihotra were also performed, and the prescribed articles were offered in the proper way. Thus, the Lord Vishnu was pleased. The ultimate purpose of offering obeisances in sacrifice is to please Lord Vishnu. But in this age of Kali, it is very difficult to collect the different articles required for offering sacrifice. People have neither the means to collect the required paraphernalia or the necessary knowledge or tendency to offer such sacrifice. Therefore, in this age of Kali, when people are mostly unfortunate, full of anxiety and disturbed by various kinds of calamities, the only sacrifice recommended is the performance of Sankirtan Yagna, worshipping Lord Chaitanya by Sankirtan Yagna is the only recommended process in this age.
After the performance of the different sacrifices, Vasudeva offered ample riches, clothing, ornaments, cows, land, and maidservants to the priest. Thereafter, all the wives of Vasudeva took their Avabrita bath and performed a part of the sacrificial duties known as Patni Samyaja. After finishing their offering with all the required paraphernalia, they all took their baths together in the lakes constructed by Parashuram, which are known as the Rama Vrada. After Vasudeva and his wives took their baths, all the garments and ornaments they had worn were distributed to the subordinate persons engaged in singing, dancing, and similar activities. We may note that the performance of sacrifice necessitates the profuse distribution of riches. Charity is offered to the priests and the brahmanas in the beginning, and used garments and ornaments are offered in charity to the subordinate assistants after the performance of the sacrifice.
After offering the used article to the singers and reciters, Vasudeva and his wife, dressed with new ornaments and garments, fed everyone very sumptuously, from the brahmanas down to the dogs. After this, all the friends, family members, wives, and children of Vasudeva assembled together along with all the kings and members of Vidarbha, Kosala, Kauru, Kwasi, Kekai, Sanjaya, destinies, the priest of the demigod, the people in general, the forefathers, the ghosts, and the Karnas were all generally remembered by being offered ample gifts and respectful honor. Then all the persons assembled there took permission from Lord Krishna, the husband of Goddess of Fortune, and while glorifying the perfection of the sacrifice made by Vasudeva, they departed for their respective homes.
At that time, when King Dhritarashtra, Vidura, Yudhishthir, Bhima, Arjun, Bhishmadev, Dronacharya, Kunti, Nakula, Sahadev, Narad, Lord Vyasadev, and many other relatives and kinsmen were about to depart, they felt separation and therefore embraced each and every member of the Yadu dynasty with great feeling. Many others who were assembled in that sacrificial arena also departed. After this, Lord Krishna and Lord Balram, along with King Ugrasen, satisfied the inhabitants of Vrindavan, headed by Maharaj Nanda and the cowherd men, by profusely offering all kinds of gifts to worship them and please them. Out of their great feelings of friendship, the inhabitants of Vrindavan remained there for a considerable time with the members of the Yadu dynasty.
After performing this sacrifice, Vasudeva felt so satisfied that there was no limit to his happiness. All the members of his family were with him, and in that presence he caught hold of the hands of Nanda Maharaja and addressed him thus: "My dear brother, the Supreme Personality of Godhead has created a great tie of bondage known as the bondage of love and affection. I think that it is a very difficult job for even the great sages and saintly persons to cut such a tie of love. My dear brother, you have exhibited feelings of love for me that I was not able to return. I think, therefore, that I am ungrateful. You have behaved exactly as is characteristic of saintly persons, but I shall never be able to repay you. I have no means to repay you for your friendly dealings. Nevertheless, I am confident that our tie of love will never break. Our friendship must ever continue. In spite of my inability to repay you, I hope you will excuse me for this inability."
My dear brother, in the beginning, due to my being imprisoned, I could never serve you as a friend. And although at the present moment I am very opulent because of my material prosperity, I have become blind. I therefore can't satisfy you properly even at this time. My dear brother, you are so nice and gentle that you, after all respect to others, but don't care for any respect for yourself. A person seeking auspicious progress in life must avoid possessing too much material opportunity so that he will not become blind and puffed up, and he should take care of his friends and relatives.
When Vasudeva was speaking to Nanda Maharaj in this way, he was influenced by a great feeling for the friendship of Nanda Maharaj and the beneficial activities executed by Nanda on his behalf. As such, his eyes filled with tears and he began to cry. Nanda Maharaj, desiring to please his friend Vasudeva and being affectionately bound with love for Lord Krishna and Balram, passed 3 months in their association. At the end of this time, all the members of the Yadu dynasty tried to please the inhabitants of Vrindavana to their heart's content. The members of the Yadu dynasty tried to satisfy Nanda Maharaj and his associates by offering them clothing, ornaments, and many other valuable articles, and they all became fully satisfied. Vasudeva, Ugrasena, Lord Krishna, Lord Balram, Uddhava, and all other members of the Yadu dynasty presented their individual gifts to Nanda Maharaj and his associates. After Nanda Maharaj received these farewell presentations, he, along with his associates, started for Brajabhumi, Vrindavana. The minds of the inhabitants of Vrindavana remained, however, with Krishna and Balram, and therefore all of them started for Vrindavana without their minds.
When the members of the Varshini family saw all their friends and visitors departing, they observed that the rainy season was approaching, and thus they decided to return to Dwaraka. They were fully satisfied, for they regarded Krishna as everything. When they returned to Dwaraka, they described with great satisfaction the sacrifice performed by Vasudeva, their meeting with the various friends and well-wishers, and various other incidents that had occurred during their travels in the places of pilgrimage. Thus ends the Bhakti-Vedanta purport of 84th chapter of Krishna's sacrificial ceremonies performed by Vasudeva.
So that concludes our hour of reading Krishna Book to Srila Prabhupada. We'd like to invite you back next week, every Sunday, 4:30 to 5:30. Let us offer our respectful obeisances to Srila Prabhupada and to each other. Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvasesha Sunyavadi Paskachade Shatarane. And to each other, Vanchakalpatubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitam Nam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Krishna Book. Jai Srila Prabhupada.